Hey everybody, back down Trail 7. Right here is where Paul came in and hooked onto my razor when I broke down. Paul from Fab Rats. It was sitting almost exactly where I've got it right now, and he's got the ability, and it's just amazing that he came down here with that tow truck, was able to drive around my razor, turn it around down here in the bottom, and then hook on and drag it up out of here. When we broke down the night before, what happened is I lost my fuel pump in here, and I was with Steve and Val, and we drug it down into here. It actually broke right up there, and if you watch Matt's off-road recovery, you've seen Paul and Matt come in here and drag a rust-colored, or that burnt orange Jeep out of here, Rubicon, that lost a motor. It took 3 of them to drag him up out of here. Matt and Rudy were both hooked on to it. It's that steep, it's pretty intense. But Steve and I, that night that I broke down, came in, we drug it down here, brought it into the bottom, and bear in mind Steve's 72 years old, and but he's probably one of the best off-roaders that I know. He doesn't get around real good, but he can drive, and he's just amazing. He's given me a lot of schools and lessons with that little 1000. All he's got done to that is he put on a set of tires, and they're only 30-inch compared to my 32s. And I've got all the high clearance stuff, and he comes through stuff that I've struggled on and makes me look like I'm a rookie. But we came down in here and got it to there, and then I got my winch out and pulled it up part way into that tree. Bear in mind it was 100% dead when I did that, and got it up. I believe it was sitting like on that bare patch there. We got it that far, and Steve just climbed up to the top, brought Val up, and then we backed him down to here, or drove him back down to here nose first, and pointed him straight at my razor. Alright, we're back to the story. I got right here, and this is where we had Steve sitting, and hooked onto my razor sitting down there. We drug it up halfway. Well, by that time it was probably 5 o'clock in the evening, and on a Saturday night. We're supposed to be going home Sunday morning first thing, and it was at Thanksgiving, so it was going to be dark within about an hour. So I got up to this point right here where we're at, and I was able to get phone service right here, which is weird, but you can. And I called down to Mesquite. Well, actually I called Moto Zoo in St. George to see if they had a fuel pump, and they didn't. And we stopped in St. George that week to winterize our camper because we were going back home. We'd been down in Mesquite for a week over Thanksgiving, riding and just having a good time. So we just stopped here because it's a good spot to get an RV park. I can winterize, and then it's one shot home from here. So that was the whole idea coming to St. George. And Charlene and I had done this trail the year before, and I did it the same way. Actually, I came in backwards of what we're doing today. We did it that way the other day, and you'll see my footage as we came down through this. I didn't think this was the same draw because it looks that much different, but it was. That's why it looked similar, but I just didn't recognize it all. And the last 2 times I've been through here, I've come down through the top because it makes it easier to get any machine down through here that way. But we got to that point, and I could get, the only fuel pump I could get was $450, and it was clear down to Mesquite. So I had a 3-hour, well, an hour and a half drive back to St. George from here, and there was no way I was going to get there before closing time. So the next morning I could have got up and been sitting at their door and picked it up, and then drove 3 hours back here and had Steve and Val bring me back in and change it. And had I known that all it had done is ruptured the fuel hose, I could have come in here and fixed it, but I had to just assume it was a dead pump. But anyway, it was because they were leaving the next day and I was supposed to. I called Matt's off-road recovery down there in St. George to see if he'd come get it, and he said he would the next morning. But he said, but wait a minute, I'm going to call a friend of mine. And I was sure he was calling Paul because he lives a lot closer to here, and this is his backyard. He knows this as well as he knows his own house, I think, and has probably played here just as much as he has in his shop. So he's lucky to have this. I mean, this is the ultimate playground, at least that I've found. But anyway, Paul called me back just a few minutes later and said he'd come in and get it the next morning. He met me in the parking lot at 7. So that's why, because it was in the middle of the trail, that's why I took it back down, so if somebody did have to come in and out, that they could get back down in there to, they could get around me if they had to. But yeah, there's just no way to describe that slope, but some razors could do it no problem. I walked right up it, and Ron did too. But I've seen it covered with sand, and I've seen people just scrape and crawl and scratch for every inch they got it coming up it. So it's different every time, so you never want to take it for granted. But I can't say it enough to thank Paul and Randall and Papa Dar for coming in and getting it. He was upset that he put a few scratches on it, and my theory is if you're dumb enough to come into these places and play in the the worst of the conditions, you better not do it unless you're willing to take that machine out of here in pieces. It's a matter of inches, even for the best driver. And the conditions change just a little, you're taking a risk of totaling one every time you come into these extreme ones. So for him to put a few scratches on it, and I feel good that he felt bad about it, but I feel a lot better that he cared, and he was willing to come get it for me and help me out. And my understanding is he's looking at getting more into that, so I hope he does, and I highly recommend him to anybody. If he's available and willing to go get you, you can't find a better person. And I think Matt and Rory both, Rory over in Moab with Tow Mater, and Matt down in St. George with all his fleet and his crew, you know, that's what they do for a living, and they've been around us forever. And you couldn't put your machine in better hands, and I can't say it'll come out unscarred the whole time, but if you're in these kind of places, you should have took that on yourself, in my opinion, that you're willing to total it before you came in here. So that's just my thought. And like I said, I'd highly recommend him. You know, and since we've been around town, you know, I've been a big fan of his for a couple years now, and I followed him from Matt's when he introduced him, and super guy. And talking to Matt that night on the phone, he's every bit as good a guy as you see on his channel. So, you know, they're super that way, and everybody I've ever talked to that's met them say that that's just who they are. And this week, while we've been down here filming and riding all these trails that we have, we've had the chance to meet some of his family, and you know, I think he's related to everybody from here to St. George, so and clear over to Cedar. But it's the community just thinks the world of him, you know. And if you follow his channel, he recommends stopping at that Archie's right there in Orderville, and you can't get a better burger than that Fab Rat burger. So, you know, all I can say is hats off to them all, and I highly recommend them, and I'm in great appreciation of everything they did for us that day, and the way his family's all treated us when we run into them, you know. And like I said, the whole community is just an outstanding place. So, but well, you got any questions about all that, Ron?
Well, if you're going to come out here and play, you better keep both hands on the steering wheel and pay attention to what you're doing, because it takes a fraction of a second not to pay attention, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. And that's the way it is. But I feel very fortunate that, you know, we can still come out here and play, and every time I go out, the quality of these machines and what they'll do just never ceases to amaze me. You know, if you want to go and you have the drive to go, they'll take you any place you want to go. The key is to keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down, because it can change. Now, we've just had a blast here this last week. People that just drive by and look at the mountain say, wow, isn't that pretty, have no idea what's back here. And you know, to get an appreciation for it, and that's the whole thing. So love it, enjoy it, and hopefully we can keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, we'll go on and get out of here. In fact, I think we're going to go over to Orderville tonight and eat over there again. So, but like I said, if you know, by chance that Paul or Matt or any of them happen to watch our channel, I can't say thank you enough. And the talent you guys have is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
You know, I've been doing this since I was old enough to drive. I started riding motorcycles as a kid at 9, and rode those up until, and then I progressed into quads, and I started driving. And I was an avid hunter at the time, so playing in the mountains, I had to have four-wheel drive, and I had to learn how to not get stuck and not roll them. So it's been my whole life too. And you know, we got into these side-by-sides, and it's all Charlene's fault, because I'd gotten over the off-roading pretty good, and she fed a junkie with a razor, and I'm hooked again, and probably worse. Okay, not probably, it's bad. I just love it. And you know, you can get out and see these places and have these challenges, and it's amazing. So, but a special thanks to Paul and all his crew, and you know, I can't say enough, and it was a pleasure meeting you. And that little bit of damage, I do worse than that about every trip, so it's minor. So I want to thank you though. Hey everybody, this is Archie's here in Orderville. So when you're passing through, stop, have a burger here. They have the Fab Rat burger that I guess Paul designed it, and it's incredible. I've had about 4 of them this week, so definitely worth your time to stop. And thanks for watching.